Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring at the message that had changed everything. 3 days ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now an alien voice spoke from the communication speakers in perfect English. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Zethkar of the Zarathi Empire. We come in peace." The alien's voice was smooth and calm, almost musical. Jake had listened to the recording 50 times and it still gave him chills. First contact. After centuries of searching the stars, they had finally found other intelligent life. "We have watched your species with great interest," the message continued. "Your rapid growth impresses us. In mere thousands of years, you have gone from simple farmers to travelers between stars. This is remarkable." Captain Lisa Rodriguez entered the bridge, carrying a thick folder of reports. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, though until now she had only studied theories. Her dark eyes showed both excitement and worry. "Any word from Earth Command?" Jake asked. "They want us to proceed carefully," Lisa replied, "but they also don't want to miss this chance. The Zarathi are offering to share their technology with us, medical advances that could extend human life by centuries, energy systems that could power entire planets." Jake nodded. The offer was incredible. The Zarathi had sent detailed plans for several basic technologies as proof of their good intentions. Earth scientists were already working to understand the designs, and early tests looked promising. Dr. Alex Turner walked onto the bridge, his usually neat hair messy from hours of work. As the ship's chief physicist, he had been studying the alien technology non-stop. "Commander, I need to show you something," Alex said, holding up a data pad. "I've been analyzing their power readings. Something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The energy signatures in their transmissions don't match any known physics. Either they're using technology far beyond what they've shown us, or—" Alex paused. "Or they're hiding something," Lisa frowned. "Maybe their technology is just more advanced than we thought. They did say they've been traveling space for thousands of years." "Maybe," Alex said, but he didn't sound convinced. Admiral Jack Sullivan's voice came over the communication system from Earth. His weathered face appeared on the main screen, showing the weight of command. "Morrison, we've made our decision. The potential benefits are too great to ignore. We're sending our best people to this meeting." Jake felt his stomach tight. "How many, sir?" 5,000. Scientists, diplomats, military leaders. The Zarathi want to meet our greatest minds. They call it the Grand Convergence." Lisa stepped forward. "Admiral, shouldn't we be more careful? We don't know anything about their true intentions." "Dr. Rodriguez, I understand your concerns," the Admiral replied. "But they've already proven their peaceful intentions by sharing technology. This could be humanity's chance to join a larger galactic community." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked at his crew. They all knew the risks, but they also knew the rewards. Lieutenant Commander Kate Adams sat at her station, monitoring alien communications. She was young but brilliant, with a gift for finding patterns others missed. For the past day, she had been trying to decode strange signals coming from Zarathi space. "Commander," Kate called out, "I'm picking up encrypted transmissions from the Zarathi ships. My computers can't break the code, but the signal strength suggests they're talking a lot more than they're letting us know." "Can you tell what they're discussing?" Jake asked. "No, sir. But the frequency of messages has increased since we agreed to the meeting. It's like they're coordinating something big." Jake felt a cold touch of fear. "Keep monitoring those signals. I want to know the moment anything changes." Over the next week, preparations for the Grand Convergence moved quickly. The Zarathi had provided coordinates for a planet called Kepler 442b, which they described as a neutral meeting place. Earth's transport ships were loaded with humanity's best people. Dr. Emma Clark, a military strategist, reviewed the mission plans with growing unease. She had fought in 3 colonial wars and had learned to trust her instincts. Something about this situation felt wrong. "The Zarathi are being too helpful," she told Jake during a private meeting. "They're answering our questions before we ask them. They're providing solutions to problems we haven't mentioned. It's like they already know everything about us." "Maybe they've been watching us longer than they said," Jake replied. "That's what I'm afraid of," Emma said. Chief Engineer Ryan Cooper was busy preparing the transport ships when he noticed something odd. The Zarathi had suggested modifications to the ship's engines to make the journey more comfortable. The changes seemed harmless, but Ryan had been an engineer for 20 years. He knew that small changes could have big effects. "The modifications will work," he told Jake. "But they'll also make our ships dependent on Zarathi technology. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to fix it ourselves." Despite the growing concerns, the mission proceeded. Earth Command believed the potential rewards outweighed the risks. Humanity had always been explorers and risk-takers. This was their nature. The night before departure, Jake stood in his quarters looking at pictures of Earth. His wife and daughter were down there, along with 8 billion other humans. If this meeting went well, their lives could be transformed. If it went badly, he might never see them again. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Lisa entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," Jake admitted. "But also excited. We're about to meet an alien civilization. Whatever happens, we're making history." "I just hope we live to tell about it," Lisa said. The next morning, 5,000 of humanity's best people boarded the transport ships. Scientists, doctors, engineers, soldiers, and diplomats. They carried the hopes and dreams of their entire species. As the ships departed Earth, heading toward the coordinates provided by the Zarathi, none of them knew they were flying into a trap that had been 50,000 years in the making. The aliens had laid the perfect plan to eliminate humanity as a threat, but the Zarathi had made one crucial mistake. They had studied human technology and tactics, but they had failed to understand the most important thing about humans. When cornered, humans didn't just fight back. They adapted, they innovated, and they turned every disadvantage into an opportunity. The trap was set, but humanity was about to show the universe why they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The first sight of Kepler 442b took everyone's breath away. The planet hung in space like a blue and silver jewel, with 3 small moons dancing around it. But it was the alien city that made them all stare in wonder. The Zarathi city floated above a crystal-clear lake that stretched to the horizon. Tall spires of white and gold metal twisted up into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of pure light. Ships moved between the buildings without any visible engines, gliding silently through the air. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered as she pressed her face against the transport window. Commander Jake Morrison stood beside her, but his soldiers' eyes were looking for something else. He counted the alien ships around the city. There were hundreds of them, all different sizes. Some were small like fighters, others were massive like battleships. "Quite a welcoming party," he said quietly. Their transport ship was guided to a landing platform near the base of the largest structure. The building looked like a pyramid, but its sides curved and twisted in ways that hurt to look at. Strange symbols glowed along its surface, changing colors every few seconds. Zethkar waited for them at the landing platform. The alien leader was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He wore robes that seemed to shift and flow like water. When he smiled, his teeth were perfectly white and sharp. "Welcome, friends from Earth," Zethkar said in his musical voice. "You honor us with your presence. Please, follow me to your accommodations." The human delegation walked through the alien city in amazement. The streets were made of some kind of crystal that glowed softly under their feet. Plants with leaves of silver and gold grew everywhere, reaching toward the alien sun. The air smelled sweet, like flowers and rain. But Dr. Emma Clark was not looking at the pretty sights. She was mapping the city in her mind, counting guards and noting exits. As a military strategist, she noticed things others missed. The beautiful bridges were positioned to control movement. The glowing streets formed patterns that could channel people in certain directions. "Commander," she whispered to Jake, "look at how they're separating us." Jake looked around and saw what she meant. The Zarathi were politely directing different groups of humans to different parts of the city. Scientists went one way, military personnel another way, diplomats a third way. "For your comfort and efficiency," Zethkar explained when Jake asked about it. "Each group will have facilities designed for their specific needs." It sounded reasonable, but Emma's instincts told her something else was happening. The accommodations were incredible. Each human was given a suite of rooms that was larger and more luxurious than anything on Earth. The walls could change color and show images from anywhere in the galaxy. The beds adjusted automatically to each person's body. Food appeared whenever they wanted it, perfectly prepared to their tastes. But Chief Engineer Ryan Cooper noticed something troubling when he tried to contact the other human groups. The communication system worked perfectly for talking to the Zarathi, but connections between human groups kept failing. Solar interference, the Zarathi explained. The star system is very active right now. Communications will improve soon. Ryan had been an engineer for 20 years. He knew the difference between solar interference and deliberate jamming. This was deliberate. Dr. Alex Turner was having similar problems in his temporary laboratory. The Zarathi had provided him with amazing equipment to study their technology, but every time he tried to run his own tests, the equipment malfunctioned in strange ways. The technology is very sensitive, his Zarathi assistant explained. It requires careful calibration for human use. Alex nodded politely, but inside he was growing suspicious. The equipment worked perfectly when studying what the aliens wanted him to study. It only failed when he tried to examine things on his own. On the second day, the Ascension Protocol began. The Zarathi explained that this was a series of tests to determine which humans were ready to receive advanced alien knowledge. "We must be careful," Zethkar told the assembled humans. "Advanced technology can be dangerous in the wrong hands. These tests will show us who can handle the responsibility." The tests seemed harmless at first. Psychological evaluations to understand human thinking, physical examinations to study human biology, technology demonstrations to see how quickly humans could learn alien science. But Marine Colonel Steve Davis noticed that the tests were getting more detailed and more invasive. The Zarathi wanted to know everything about human military tactics, weapon systems, and defense strategies. "Why do they need to know our combat formations?" he asked Jake privately. "Maybe they want to understand how we think," Jake replied, but he was beginning to have the same concerns. Dr. Sam Peters started feeling sick after the first day of testing. At first, he thought it was just stress from the alien environment. But when he checked with other humans, he found that many were having similar symptoms: headaches, nausea, weakness. When he tried to examine his own blood with the alien medical equipment, the machines gave him results that made no sense. According to the readings, his blood chemistry was changing in impossible ways. "The adjustment to our environment can be difficult," the Zarathi medical staff explained. "Your bodies are adapting to our world. This is normal." But Sam had been a biochemist for 15 years. Nothing about these changes was normal. Captain Helen Foster was exploring the lower levels of the pyramid when she made a discovery that changed everything. She had gotten lost trying to find the human dining area and wandered into a restricted section. The corridors here were different, darker. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to move and writhe when she looked at them. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the building, like machinery mixed with something else she couldn't identify. She found a room filled with screens showing images from all over the galaxy. Battle scenes, destroyed cities, dead worlds floating in space. And in the center of it all, she saw Earth. The screen showed Earth's defenses in perfect detail. Every ship, every weapon, every military base. The aliens knew exactly how to attack her home world. Helen backed away from the room, her heart pounding. She needed to tell the others, but would they believe her? And more importantly, could they do anything about it? As she made her way back to the human quarters, Helen noticed something else. Security checkpoints had appeared throughout the building. Zarathi guards stood at every intersection, watching the humans with their large, dark eyes. "For your protection," they said when asked. "There are dangerous areas in our city." But Helen knew the truth. The guards weren't there to protect the humans. They were there to keep them from leaving. That night, as the human delegation settled into their luxurious prison, communications with Earth were cut off completely. The Zarathi apologized and promised the problems would be fixed soon. But in the lower levels of the pyramid, machines hummed with power. Weapons were being prepared. And somewhere in the depths of the alien city, something was counting down to zero. The trap was closing, and 5,000 of humanity's best people were caught inside it. But none of them knew that in trying to eliminate the human threat, the Zarathi had just made their biggest mistake. They had brought humanity's greatest minds together in one place, given them a common enemy, and trapped them with nowhere to run. Soon, they would learn what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. The morning of the seventh day brought an end to all pretense. Zethkar gathered all 5,000 humans in the great hall at the center of the pyramid. The room was enormous, with walls that stretched up into darkness. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that moved without anything to cast them. The alien leader stood on a platform high above the humans. His friendly smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. When he spoke, his musical voice carried easily through the vast space. "People of Earth," he began, "it is time for truth." Jake Morrison felt his blood turn to ice. Around him, he could see other humans shifting nervously. Lisa Rodriguez moved closer to him, her hand finding his arm. "For 50,000 years, the Zarathi Empire has maintained peace in this galaxy," Zethkar continued. "We have watched over younger species, guiding them, protecting them from the chaos that comes with uncontrolled growth." Dr. Alex Turner whispered to the person next to him. "This doesn't sound like the speech of peaceful shepherds." "Your species troubles us," the alien leader said. "In 10,000 years, you have gone from simple farmers to travelers between stars. This rate of growth is dangerous. We call species like yours chaos breeds those who change too quickly, who disturb the natural order." Dr. Emma Clark was already thinking tactically. She counted the exits from the hall. There were 12, but Zarathi guards stood at each one. The aliens had weapons that looked like staffs made of crystal, but she suspected they were far more deadly than they appeared. "The Ascension Protocol was never about lifting you up," Zethkar said, his voice growing harder. "It was about studying you, learning your weaknesses, understanding how to contain the threat you represent." Marine Colonel Steve Davis clenched his fists. His weapons had been taken on the first day for safety reasons. Now he understood why. The humans had been disarmed before they even knew they were prisoners. "Every conversation you have had, every test you have taken, every moment of your stay here has been recorded and analyzed," the alien continued. "We now know everything about your technology, your tactics, your psychology. We know exactly how to defeat your species." Lieutenant Commander Kate Adams thought about the encrypted signals she had detected. Now she understood what those communications had been about. The aliens had been sharing intelligence about humans with their fleet. "This facility serves a purpose you could not imagine," Zethkar said. "It is where we bring the best minds of troublesome species. Once they are removed, their home worlds become easy to conquer. You are not the first to stand in this hall." Chief Engineer Ryan Cooper felt sick. "What happened to the others?" he called out. Zethkar's smile returned, but it was not pleasant. "Come, let me show you." The humans were herded through corridors they had not seen before. The walls here were darker, covered with strange markings. The air smelled of metal and something else that made their skin crawl. They descended deep into the pyramid, past levels that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached a vast chamber filled with display cases. Each case contained artifacts from different civilizations, weapons, art, technology, clothing. 17 species have stood where you stand now, Zethkar explained as they walked between the displays. The Kethmari were master builders who could construct cities in the clouds. The Zephi were warriors who conquered 100 worlds in 50 years. The Veltaran were scientists who unlocked the secrets of time itself. Dr. Sam Peters stopped at one display case. Inside was a uniform that looked almost human, but not quite. The fabric was a deep blue color, and strange symbols covered the chest. "The Tervani," Zethkar said, noticing Sam's interest. "They were very much like you, quick to adapt, fast to learn, impossible to control. They lasted 3 days longer than we expected." Lisa Rodriguez felt tears in her eyes. "You murdered them all." "We preserved galactic peace," the alien replied without emotion. "As we will preserve it again." Lieutenant Colonel Matt Johnson had been quiet during the tour, but his mind was working. As a military intelligence officer, he was trained to notice details others missed. The display cases were arranged in a specific pattern. The lighting followed a grid. Even this museum of death was part of a larger system. "How does it work?" he asked suddenly. Zethkar looked at him with interest. What do you mean? This facility, how do you kill us? Gas, poison, starvation? The alien leader seemed pleased by the question. Much more elegant than that. This entire pyramid is a weapon, designed specifically for each species we bring here. The walls themselves are laced with frequencies that disrupt human neural activity. The air contains compounds that break down your immune system. The food has been carrying genetic markers that make your cells vulnerable to directed energy. Dr. Grace Miller stepped forward. She was a young doctor, but she had been studying the symptoms that were affecting the humans. That's why we've been getting sick. Your bodies are being prepared, Zethkar confirmed. In 3 more days, we will activate the final stage. Death will be quick and painless. Your species will simply stop. The humans stood in shocked silence. Everything made sense now. The separation into groups was to study different types of humans. The tests were to map their capabilities. The luxury was to keep them calm while their bodies were slowly poisoned. But Captain Ben Wallace was thinking about something else. He was a demolitions expert and he had been studying the pyramid structure. If the entire building was a weapon, then it had to have a power source, and power sources could be overloaded. You made one mistake, he said quietly. Zethkar turned to him. Oh, what might that be? You brought us all here together, Ben replied. 5,000 of humanity's best minds all in one place, all with the same problem to solve. The alien leader laughed. You have no weapons, no tools, no way to communicate with your home world. What could you possibly do? Dr. Tony Garcia had been examining the walls while they talked. As a physicist, he was interested in the energy patterns he could see flickering beneath the surface. The frequencies Zethkar mentioned were visible to him as waves of light that pulsed through the alien metal. We could think, Tony said simply. Think all you want, Zethkar replied. You have 72 hours before the final activation. Use them wisely. The humans were escorted back to their quarters, but now the luxurious rooms felt like tombs. Guards stood outside every door. The communication systems had been shut down completely. The windows showed only the alien city beyond, with its impossible architecture and flying ships. But in the darkness of their prison, something was beginning to happen. The humans had been brought together, given a common enemy, and told exactly how they were going to die. The Zarathi had shared their technology, their methods, their timeline. In trying to create the perfect trap, they had given their prisoners the perfect blueprint for escape. Jake Morrison sat in his room, thinking about his daughter's face. She would never see her father again unless he found a way out of this place. But he was not thinking about escape anymore. He was thinking about something much more ambitious. If this pyramid was the center of Zarathi power, if it connected to their entire galactic network, if it contained the accumulated knowledge of 17 conquered civilizations, then destroying it would not just free the humans. It would cripple the entire Zarathi empire. The trap was closing, but the prey was about to become the predator. The aliens had made their perfect weapon, but they had forgotten one important thing about humans. When humans were cornered with nothing to lose, they became the most dangerous creatures in the universe. The humans had 60 hours left to live, but they were not acting like people facing death. Instead, they were acting like people who had work to do. In the medical wing, Dr. Sam Peters and Dr. Grace Miller were not trying to cure their poisoning. They were studying it. Every symptom, every change in their blood, every weakness the aliens had created in their bodies was being mapped and understood. The genetic markers they put in our food, Grace said as she looked at blood samples under an alien microscope. They're designed to make us vulnerable to a specific frequency of energy, Sam nodded. But if we can isolate those markers, we can create a compound that works the opposite way, something that would be deadly to anyone who doesn't have human genetics. They worked through the night, using the Zarathi's own advanced medical equipment against them. The aliens had given them everything they needed to create a weapon. They just had to figure out how to use it. In another part of the pyramid, Dr. Tony Garcia was having the most important conversation of his life. He sat in a circle with 20 other physicists and engineers, all of them staring at diagrams drawn on the floor with pieces of broken alien technology. The energy waves in the walls follow a pattern, Tony explained. It's like a musical chord but made of electromagnetic frequencies instead of sound. If we can create a counter-frequency, we can disrupt the entire system. Chief Engineer Ryan Cooper looked at the diagrams. The power conduits run through every wall in this building. If we can overload just one section, the feedback will spread through the entire network. But we need to build a resonance amplifier, added Dr. Janet Ross, a brilliant young engineer. Something that can take a small signal and make it powerful enough to affect the whole building. The Zarathi gave us everything we need, Ryan said with a grim smile. Their own technology is going to destroy them. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Johnson was leading a different kind of meeting. Military personnel from all branches sat in his quarters, sharing intelligence they had gathered during their week in the pyramid. The guards change shifts every 6 hours, reported Captain Helen Foster. There's a 2-minute gap when the corridors are not watched. Marine Colonel Steve Davis added, the weapons they carry are powered by the same energy system that runs the building. If we can disrupt the power, we can disarm them. The real prize is the command center, Matt said. From what I've observed, it's located at the top of the pyramid. If we can take control of it, we can access their entire galactic network. Dr. Emma Clark had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. We're not just planning an escape anymore, are we? Matt looked at her seriously. No, we're planning to end the Zarathi Empire. Nurse Amy Brooks was working with a different group entirely. She had gathered chemists, biologists, and medical staff in the abandoned kitchen area. They were cooking, but not food. The cleaning supplies they gave us contain compounds that are harmless to humans, Amy explained as she mixed chemicals in a large pot. But when combined with the alien blood samples we collected from the medical bay, they create something very different. Dr. Carl Lewis, a biochemist, checked the mixture with a scanner. It's an airborne agent that will specifically target Zarathi physiology. Their breathing system will shut down in minutes. How do we spread it through the building? Asked Dr. Linda Parker, a young scientist. Amy smiled. The same ventilation system they're using to poison us. We just reverse the flow. In the lower levels of the pyramid, Captain Ben Wallace was doing something that would have been impossible for any previous species the Zarathi had captured. He was turning their own security system into a demolition device. Working with a team of engineers, he had accessed the maintenance tunnels that ran behind the walls. The tunnels were filled with power conduits, data cables, and structural supports. The beauty of their design is that everything is connected, Ben explained to his team. They made this building into one giant weapon, but that means if we hit the right spots, the whole thing becomes one giant bomb. Lieutenant Dan Miller had been working on the most important task of all. Using parts from broken alien equipment, he had built a device that could hack into the Zarathi communication network. I can't send messages to Earth, he told Commander Jake Morrison, but I can access their internal systems. And Jake, what I found changes everything. Dan showed him a screen filled with alien text that slowly translated itself into English. This isn't just a prison, it's their main command center. Every ship in their fleet, every operation in their empire, it all runs through computers in this building. Jake stared at the information. Fleet positions, troop movements, invasion plans. They brought us to the center of their power. Gets better, Dan said with a dark smile. Their quantum communication system uses the same energy network as the building's weapons. If we overload the building, we don't just destroy this place. We send a feedback pulse through their entire galactic network. Admiral Jack Sullivan's voice had been quiet since the revelation, but now he spoke up from where he sat in the corner of the room. How much damage could we do? Every ship, every base, every facility connected to their network, Dan replied. We could cripple their entire civilization. As the hours passed, the separate groups began to coordinate their efforts. The weapon that Dr. Sam Peters and Dr. Grace Miller had created would be delivered through the air system that Amy Brooks had figured out how to reverse. The resonance amplifier that Tony Garcia had designed would be built using components that Ben Wallace's team could access in the maintenance tunnels. But the most important discovery came from Dr. Alex Turner, who had been studying the alien technology since their first day. He called an emergency meeting of all the group leaders. "I figured out why their plan has always worked," he said. "Every species they've captured before was either too primitive to understand their technology or too advanced to want to destroy it. Primitive species couldn't use their own weapons against them. Advanced species tried to find diplomatic solutions." "But we're different," Lisa Rodriguez said, understanding immediately. "We're right in the middle," Alex confirmed. "Advanced enough to understand their technology, but not so advanced that we've lost our survival instincts. We're the first species they've encountered that's smart enough to turn their own weapons against them and desperate enough to actually do it." Commander Jake Morrison looked around at the faces of humanity's greatest minds. Scientists, soldiers, doctors, engineers. All of them working together toward a single goal. "How long do we need?" he asked. 18 hours to build everything," Tony replied. 6 hours to coordinate the attack." Jake checked his watch. "They had 36 hours before the Zarathi activated their final weapon. Then we have 12 hours to spare," he said. "Let's give these aliens a lesson they'll never forget." In the depths of the pyramid, machines hummed with alien power, but now human hands were touching those machines. Human minds were understanding their secrets, and human determination was turning the Zarathi's perfect trap into their own destruction. The countdown continued, but now both sides were racing toward zero. The question was no longer whether the humans would survive. The question was whether the Zarathi Empire would. The final countdown began at exactly midnight Zarathi time. In 18 hours, the aliens would activate their ultimate weapon, and 5,000 humans would die. But the humans were no longer waiting to be killed. They were preparing to kill first. Dr. Tony Garcia made the final adjustments to the resonance amplifier hidden in the maintenance tunnel. The device was built from alien technology, but it had been designed by human minds. It would create a frequency that would turn the entire pyramid into a massive tuning fork, vibrating itself apart. "Resonance amplifier is ready," he whispered into his communication device. The humans had built their own network using stolen alien equipment. In the medical bay, Dr. Sam Peters loaded the last batch of their biological weapon into the air recycling system. The compound would spread through the building in minutes once released, targeting only Zarathi biology. "Biological agent ready for deployment," he reported. Captain Ben Wallace checked the explosive charges his team had placed at key structural points throughout the pyramid. They were not normal bombs, but devices that would overload the alien power conduits at exactly the right moment. "Demolition charges in position," he confirmed. Lieutenant Dan Miller sat at the communication console he had secretly built, his fingers dancing over controls that could access the entire Zarathi galactic network. Through this system, he could send a devastating feedback pulse to every alien ship and base in the galaxy. "Network access confirmed," he said. "I can reach every Zarathi facility from here." Commander Jake Morrison stood in the center of the human command post they had established in an abandoned storage room. Around him, the greatest minds of humanity worked together with a precision that would have impressed their captors if the aliens had known what was happening. "Status report," Jake said. Dr. Emma Clark looked at her tactical display. "All teams are in position. We can begin the operation in 60 seconds. Admiral Jack Sullivan checked his watch. "The Zarathi will start their final weapon sequence in 6 hours. Are we sure our timing is right?" "We don't want to wait," Matt Johnson replied. "The longer we wait, the more chance they'll discover what we're doing." Jake nodded. "All teams prepare for operation reversal. We execute in 30 seconds. The humans had chosen their operation name carefully. They were not just escaping from the alien trap. They were reversing it completely, turning the hunters into the hunted. 15 seconds, Jake announced. In the command center at the top of the pyramid, Zethkar was reviewing the final preparations for humanity's execution. The energy systems were charging perfectly. The biological agents were at optimal concentration. The neural disruptors were calibrated precisely for human brain waves. 10 seconds, Jake's voice echoed through the human communication network. Zethkar smiled as he looked at the readings on his screens. In 6 hours, the human threat would be eliminated forever. The Earth would be defenseless, ready for conquest. Another species would join the 17 others in the museum below, 5 seconds. The alien leader had no idea that human hands were already reaching for the controls of his own weapons. Execute. The first thing that happened was the lights went out, not just in one section but throughout the entire pyramid. Ben Wallace's charges had overloaded the main power grid at exactly the same moment that Tony Garcia's resonance amplifier activated. The building began to shake. A low humming sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. The frequency was exactly right to make the alien metal vibrate at its natural resonance. The walls themselves were becoming weapons against their builders. In the darkness, Nurse Amy Brooks activated the air system that would spread their biological weapon. The compound flowed through the ventilation network, reaching every corner of the pyramid in minutes. Zarathi guards throughout the building suddenly found themselves gasping for air. Their breathing systems, so different from human lungs, could not process the poison that now filled the atmosphere. They collapsed one by one, their crystal weapons clattering to the floor. Zethkar felt the building shake and heard his guards calling for help over the communication system. But when he tried to respond, he found that the network was no longer under his control. Lieutenant Dan Miller had taken over the Zarathi communication grid. Every message, every command, every piece of data was now flowing through systems controlled by human intelligence. "What is happening?" Zethkar demanded as he tried to reach his fleet commanders. His answer came from Commander Jake Morrison, whose voice now spoke from every communication device in the pyramid. "You made a mistake," Jake said calmly. "You brought humanity's greatest minds to the center of your power and gave us time to think." The alien leader tried to activate the emergency systems, but nothing responded. Human hackers had already taken control of every computer in the building. "Your species has ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years, Jake continued. "But your time is over." Dan Miller entered the final sequence into the Galactic communication network. The feedback pulse he had prepared would travel through quantum space to every Zarathi facility in the galaxy, carrying a computer virus designed specifically for their technology. "You studied us, learned our weaknesses, planned our destruction," Jake said. "But you forgot the most important thing about humans." The resonance frequency reached its peak. The pyramid shook so violently that pieces of the alien metal began to break away from the walls. The building that had been designed as the perfect trap was tearing itself apart. "When you corner a human, you don't get surrender," Jake said. "You get innovation." Zethkar tried to run, but the biological weapon had already reached the command center. His breathing became labored, his vision blurred. Around him, other aliens were collapsing as their bodies failed them. "When you threaten a human's family, you don't get compliance," Jake continued. "You get determination." The feedback pulse launched into the galactic network, carrying its deadly cargo to Zarathi facilities across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, alien computers began to fail. Ships lost power and drifted in space. Military bases went dark. The technological empire that had ruled for millennia was dying in minutes. "And when you try to eliminate humanity," Jake said as the pyramid collapsed around them, "you don't get extinction, you get evolution." The humans had already evacuated to the lower levels, protected by their knowledge of the building's structure. As the pyramid fell, they worked their way to the alien ships in the underground hangar. The Zarathi had taught them how to operate the vessels during their technology demonstrations. Captain Helen Foster piloted the first ship out of the collapsing structure, followed by dozens of others carrying the human survivors. Behind them, the center of Zarathi power burned against the alien sky. As they flew toward the coordinates for Earth, Dan Miller continued to monitor the galactic network. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Zarathi forces were surrendering. Conquered worlds were declaring independence. The Empire was finished. Dr. Emma Clark made the final log entry for Operation Reversal. The Zarathi spent 50,000 years perfecting their trap. They studied 17 species and learned from every victory. They thought they understood the nature of intelligent life. She paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to freedom instead of oppression. "But they never encountered anything like humanity. We don't just adapt to our environment, we adapt our environment to us. We don't just solve problems, we turn problems into opportunities." As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading home to Earth, the ruins of the pyramid continued to burn. In the ashes lay the remains of an empire that had thought itself invincible. The aliens had laid the perfect trap, but humanity had made it their tomb.